Special guest with us here today, Dave. I know it's someone you know well, and I know her work very well. A very thorough researcher, one of the best out there. I caught on to her early on, I think a couple of years ago, watching the Sandy Hook spectacular video she did, the 2, 3, 4, and 5 dimensions. Then that led me to her 9/11 researching. And, I'll say this, I had no clue once I got into Flat Earth that Sofia was in a Flat Earth. You were the one that bridged that for me, Dave. And our special guest today is your friend, Sofia Smallstorm. Sofia, how are you?
I'm fine. I really appreciate both of you fitting this into your tight, very busy schedules. Thank you.
Sofia, I don't know if you are aware that you are the person that got me to look into Flat Earth. You and I were having a conversation about all of the insanity in the world, one thing after another. And we're like, it's totally crazy. And right at the end of the conversation, you said to me, you think that's crazy? For all I know, the Earth could be flat. And I had been barraged with people telling me to look into Flat Earth, and I've been blocking them, as I've told the story 100 times. And you said that, and that's the night I started looking into Flat Earth and tried to debunk it. And here I am on the Flat Earth podcast.
David, I did not know that little bit of the timeline. I'm sure in the history of your life, it's a crucial turning point. But I do know that around that time we were talking, a friend of mine had phoned me and urged me to look into the Flat Earth. And I thought he was a nutcase. And I told him, I said, no, I am not going to look at this. And he reasoned with me. He gave me 2 or 3 of the Flat Earth perspective arguments on the phone in a very relaxed, low-key, intelligent way. And I decided, well, you know what? I don't have any grounds to refute that or debunk it or rebut it. And now I'm going to go out into the world and I'm going to use my own eyes. And I went to the beach that afternoon, took a long walk, and I was looking at the people. I mean, there were people collecting shells and that kind of thing, walking, and I felt so sorry for them. I thought, those poor people, they don't know that the Earth is flat. What a terrible thing.
That's right when you told me about it, and it literally, it was at the perfect moment, because I think that day I had probably a half a dozen emails and instant messages of people sending me Flat Earth stuff, and I couldn't take it anymore, and I still was refusing to look at it. But then I trust lots of the research that you do, or all of it basically, and I started looking, and you are the reason that this podcast exists.
I think you're being too generous. I say to people, I am still on a discussion level. There's only 1 or 2 small things that I've discovered on my own that I've brought to the Flat Earth community to seek an explanation. And so far, I've not received a thorough explanation of the phenomena that I am referring to. But the Ball Earth certainly can explain it. So I can't say that I'm a researcher per se, because I do not do some of the things that these other people do. They measure and they make very, the AutoCAD diagrams and so forth. I just have used my own senses and what I have learned in terms of, for instance, this almanac finding that you and I talked about on another show, David. But anyway, we won't get bogged.
Actually, I just like to mention that because there's a lot of good researchers that listen to this show that might take that information and make something of it. So just real quick, without digging in, it's something that Sofia has coined as daytime creep. Is that what it is, Sofia?
I knew you would mess it up. Sunrise, sunset, creep. Sunrise, sunset, creep. And it started, I'll refresh everyone on what this is. So a lifeguard in his 50s told me not to continue to wait with bated breath for the winter solstice, when I believed we were going to start getting longer evenings and this whole nasty phase of being descended into darkness at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. would end. And that's what everybody thinks. They think, oh, we just have to wait till December 21st and then it'll turn around. We'll have the longer evenings. He said, no. He said, look, the evenings are already longer. And we were around December 15th. This was a couple of years ago. And I said, what do you mean? He said, the sunset starts to back off in the first week of December, after the 7th or so. And he says the sun rises later. It's later till the first week of January, after the 7th or so. I said, what? And he said, yeah, the 21st, it has nothing to do with it. That's just in terms of time, sheer time. That is going to be the longest night and the shortest day. And of course, the inverse applies to June 21st. So I said, I don't believe you. And I ran to my car, got my tide chart, which is an almanac of sorts, and looked it up because that has the sunset time listed and sunrise. He was right. It's actually around December 12th and June 12th, and then there's a correlating January 12th or 13th and July 12th or 13th. So our nights get shorter around that December 12th turning point. And yet the sun continues to rise later and later in the morning, all the way to January 12th or 13th. And the same for the summer. June 21st is, in terms of sheer time, the longest day and the shortest night. But we are already starting to have our sunsets creep up as of June 12th or so. And our sunrises continue to be earlier and earlier until July 12th or so. And this pertains to the entire world. You can look up sunset times in Perth, Australia, in Bangkok, wherever you want to look. It's the same thing. So that's what I was looking for an explanation for.
And so that was early on in your flat Earth journey, Sophia, correct? That wasn't. I mean, that was one of the initial things that got you started into this.
Well, that was one of the things that I brought. It was like I was a little dog bringing a slipper to my owner, and the owner being, in this scenario, the flat Earth experts. Here's my slipper that I have found, or like a cat bringing a mouse in the door.
Right.
So my quick analysis of it is the reason that it creeps is because it's not it's a change in the speed, and it's either a change in the speed of the spin of the Earth or a change in the speed of the cycle of the sun going around the Earth. And I think it's pretty obvious that if the spin of the Earth was changing, we'd all know it. But I'd really like somebody that's better at this analysis and AutoCAD or whatever program they can use to look into that. And I think it's a spinning ball killer.
Let me ask you this, Dave. Could it also be that the sun is ascending or descending during that period? Because if it gets higher, it wouldn't have to change the speed. It would just look faster or slower from our perspective.
So if you believe in the cycling sun, that goes out wider, during the inner northern hemisphere's winter, speeding up and then comes back in, slowing down, there has to be an acceleration and a deceleration of that outward movement and inward movement. And that's something that's just not constant. It speeds up and slows down. Right. If that's what you believe, but there's actually several explanations that could work, and I am not pretending. What's the word? To know the answer.
Pretending. So listen, when I talked to Bob and Cami, they had developed their grid of the magnetic flux lines. And my suspicion, it was just a sense, and I had really very little to explain this with, was that the sun was doing a boing kind of thing. And there was a flux line issue. It was hitting its flux point. And it was you see, because if it's true that the sun circles out to the Tropic of Capricorn, is that the one in the lower hemisphere,
correct,
supposedly?
Yes.
Yeah. So then when it hits that, it has to receive some kind of information, or it has to start coming back. And there's a wobble. David, you and I came up with this wobble idea very early on. And the same with Tropic of Cancer. It arrives to its maximum point of advance, and then it has to start receding. And it is doing something. It's wobbling or boinging, or the thing. I don't know how to explain it beyond that. There's some point at which it receives this return signal or begins to make its return. That's the best I can do. So anyone who can improve that, there's a lot of room for improvement.
You brought up something about Bob and Cammie's map with the magnetic declination. Have you guys looked into that? Because about a year, maybe a little over a year ago, last June, I got really into researching the magnetic declination lines of the so-called globe. And it was one of my early areas of specific areas of research, because back at my old job, I used to work on oil rigs years ago. And one of the things we did when we would drill was, the company that I was working for would put a computer system at the bottom of these drill strings. And one of the things that we always had to do was we had to tell it where north was. And so during our academy, when we went to this academy, we learned all about this magnetic declination. When I looked into this flat Earth, I thought there might be a connection. And I remember looking back at my notes from this job, and I was like, wait a minute, the magnetic declination was never off very much in the areas that we drilled. And so when I dove into that area of research, I found some really fishy things. It's like the magnetic declination didn't even come about until, I think, the late 16 or early 1700s. Prior to that, ships were sailing all over the world without the use of magnetic declination correction.
That's that's amazing. I mean, it's so, there's so many things that have no explanation when you look at it, from the globe view.
Yeah, it's just like nowadays they tell us we have to correct our compass to these magnetic lines of the Earth. And if not, you're gonna, you'll go shipwrecked, or a plane will disappear, or whatever, if you don't get it right. But how did they do it prior to the 1600s? How are they finding places without this so-called correction? And that was a huge red flag early on in my research. I didn't know if you guys had looked into that a lot or not.
But listen, the magnetic declination, that is like way over my head. I just brought in my little dead mouse, which is the sunrise sunset creep, and I'm not really a researcher.
Sophia, so just a question, and we can move on to some of the more stuff that I would really want to talk to you about. Would you, without putting yourself in a group, because the whole group idea is crazy, because there's crazy people everywhere, would you consider yourself a flat earther?
Well, again, I am willing to accept that the Earth is flat. So if that makes me a flat earther, fine. Bully for me. But what I'd like to say is, I don't have every argument under the sun to discuss and rebut the various theories that are proffered and kicked around on this playground. I simply had issues with the ball earth and the seasons, especially when I was a child. I really had issues with that. I could not understand how, when we are supposedly farthest away from the sun, we are having summer. How is that? How does that make any sense at all? That never worked for me.
Makes no sense.
Right.
It doesn't.
Right. And they tell you, oh, it's the angle. We're just tilted.
My angle is that if it's the angle, then at sunrise every day, summer or winter, it should be freezing, because that's the most severe angle. So it doesn't make sense that at sunrise, it's not freezing, and that at noon on any day of the year, it's not warmer than sunrise.
Well, at noon it is warmer than sunrise, but not by that many degrees, not enough degrees to make it a season worth of difference.
What I meant is noon on December 21st versus sunrise on June 21st. The angle of the sun at noon on December 21st is far more direct than at sunrise at June. I've made this point many times. And ballers just ignore that. They're like, well, and they don't say anything, because, when it's 1 degree off the horizon, you can't get any more severe than that, except a half a degree. But at noon on December 21st, you might be at a 45-degree angle. It should be warmer, but it's not. So it's distance, not angle.
Right.
The angle makes a tiny bit of a difference.
Right. I said it shouldn't make a season's worth of difference. Like it shouldn't feel like summer or winter in the span of one simple day.
Right.
Or is that off the mark?
No, I agree with what she's saying. It doesn't make sense. I wanted to ask Sophia, because Dave was telling me about it. Sophia, you started some products, and I don't know anything about it. I know Dave does. So you've got someone on the line that knows about them, and then someone else who hasn't heard anything about them except that they're called Flat Earth Minerals. And I wanted to ask you first, before you explain what they are, why the name Flat Earth Minerals?
All right. So I switched from being a DVD store to being a store that offered for sale some of the things that I had discovered as I crossed the age 50 mark, things that I discovered that really turned me around in terms of how I felt. I'm not speaking in terms of curing diseases, or I'm not speaking as though I'm a healthcare practitioner, but there are things that are available to us still, thank you, that are very simple. They are not expensive formulations. There's no pyramid network marketing. These are simple things that changed let's just say the course of how I felt in a radical way, such that I had to start sharing this with other people. And I would say to you now that all of them relate to the earth. And the fact is that we are electrical. We are electrical and electromagnetic. And you can say God made us that way, or you can say that's just how life is. Life is electricity. And on the cellular level, we are constantly needing electrons. So electrons, which no one has ever seen, these subatomic particles, they are the tiny little elements that keep us going. And in order to facilitate that electron exchange on the cellular level, to make sure that your cells have enough uptake of electrons and aren't losing too many electrons in how much work they're doing, and they're not getting any back to sustain themselves and keep themselves going. Bioelectricity, it's called. It has to do with biochemistry, biophysics, and all of it relates to the earth. All of it. You've absolutely got to have sunlight. Sunlight gives you electrons. The photons coming into your eyes kick off vitamin D production, which kicks off hundreds of biological activities in your body. You cannot live in what's called biological darkness. You absolutely need to have a very important mineral, which actually in its most fundamental state is a metal, and that would be iodine. And another one is magnesium. And there are reasons in our modern world why we need more of this than we would have needed, say, 100 or 200 years ago, when the earth was saner, the world was not full of this much toxin, and we didn't have addictions to this many technologies that are stripping us, ruining our electrical configurations.
So, Sophia, you and I, over the years, you have turned me on to so many things that have literally changed my life. And starting from, you say we need these electrons. You introduced me to grounding, and I sleep on a grounding strip that I got from you. I stand on a grounding mat when I am at my stand-up desk. And I'm outside barefoot. I've done that my whole life. If I don't feel well, I go outside barefoot. Put your feet in the sand, stand on the grass, lay down, and you always feel better immediately. So just starting with that really brings home the point of what you were saying, that we're electrical beings and that we need to be connected to the earth. And I just wanted to thank you for that information.
Well, you're very welcome, David. And unfortunately, our modern lives have taken us really away and off the ground, away from the sky and off the ground. We live indoors. We live sometimes at elevation. We live on the second floor, third floor, fourth floor, and we're not getting enough of the negative charge. All right, so it is theorized that lightning hits the earth 200 times a second. Doesn't matter where. And this electricity, the lightning bolts striking the earth, are creating a mild electron flow in the ground. And the ground is conductive. It's principally made of water, which is conductive, and minerals. Quartz, silica, all kinds of minerals are conductive. And then soil has a mixture of water and minerals. Even the desert earth is mineral based. So we have conductivity, a very mild, you could call it a current, or you could call it an electron flow in the ground. And because we're principally water, we are conductive as well. And every living thing has evolved such that that mild electron flow is a benefit. It's a very important natural benefit. It's a life energy booster. So plants get the electron flow, animals, your dog, when he's snuffling around in the bushes, his wet nose and his paws are picking up electrons. But you, in your rubber-soled shoes, you, in your apartment on the third floor, or even your first floor apartment with its carpet or its sealed flooring, you're not getting any electrons. And that means that we are taking our electrons out of food processing. And that, in my opinion, and in the opinion of only a very few number of scientists, I've discussed this with one of them, a biophysicist, we are not supposed to get the majority of our electron transfer out of what's called donated electrons from food. It principally comes from the breakdown of fats and carbohydrates. And when you're living off the ground, everybody is scarfing down fats and carbohydrates. They're eating too much. That's why we have an obesity epidemic, in part. So when you go outside, when you walk barefoot, even 50, 60 years ago, children walked to school on dirt paths, on sidewalks that are conductive. Concrete is conductive. Tar is not. And men walk to work in their leather-soled shoes, which are conductive. And they received electron transfer. But now, even the expensive men's shoes in the fine stores have rubber soles, and people don't walk. They take the, transportation, the train, or they drive, and they don't go outside. They don't fill their eyes with the blue sky. And we, of course, have a filtration going on in the form of chemtrails. So we're getting a very altered light form that's coming into our eyes, and that doesn't kick off the vitamin D production, which means you're living in biological darkness. The new light bulbs are not creating any heat. They are cold blue light, and they don't produce yellow thermal light, which is what sunlight is, firelight is, proper daylight. So we don't get the vitamin D production and the consequent hundreds of biological actions and exchanges that depend on light, photons, and electrons kicking us into gear when we wake up every day. So that's why I propose grounding, because yes, when you ground, you walk barefoot, you garden. People love to garden. They find it very relaxing because their fingers are drawing electrons in from the soil. And we love to walk. Everybody who goes to the beach, unless they have some kind of foot problem, I've noticed that even old people, they like to take their shoes off and walk barefoot because they come home supplied with millions and millions of electrons that go into an actual substance in your body called ground substance. It's between the tissues, and the electrons that you've received from the outdoors are banked in that ground substance, and your body does repairs with them all night long.
So let me ask you a question. I have a grounding strip that you made yourself. I know that you sold them in the past, and I don't know if they're still available. I know that many people want them. So I'm asking you, is that something that you are actively selling to the public? Because I love it. It's a strip that wraps around my mattress. My skin lays on top of it, and it uses the grounding circuits in your house, the ground of your plug, which actually, for those of you that don't know, have a direct connection to a rod that is stuck in the ground. So literally, you are connected to the ground. Is that something that people can get from you? And if not, where can they get something like that?
All right, so I'll lay it out, David, since you've forced me. You've put me in, as you would say in your neighborhood, a corner. Okay? Laugh.
Yeah, I was on mute. I laughed on mute.
All right, so I enhanced a grounding system that was designed by a friend of mine. I improved it in several ways. It's very small, it's very compact, it's very portable. The bed strip that you referred to is an accessory, it's an add on product that I designed, you could call it invented. They're now made for me by a sewing contractor that I have, and they're made of silver mesh fabric. They're very narrow. They're only 6 inches wide, so they're not cumbersome. You can travel with it, put it on a hotel bed, but you need the basic grounding assembly that comes with it, which is the starter product, and it's slightly over $100, and it gives you the option of grounding with resistance or going straight to ground. That's how it's an improvement over the commercial products, the mat that you were speaking of that's available online, grounding mats and grounding sheets. I don't sell this online to the public at large because, in my experience, grounding requires a lot of coaching, a lot of personal support. And I cannot have an avalanche of orders and give this kind of time and support to everyone. What I also have noticed is that people who have Wi Fi or stressful lives or are on their cell phones a lot or don't take care of themselves in a basic way, meaning they're on the standard American diet with the standard American stress, they don't respond well to grounding as a rule. So they come back to me and say that the thing doesn't work and they want to return it. And taking returns is a big pain in the butt. So I recommend that only really certain people are good candidates for grounding. That's not to say that grounding doesn't help everyone, because it does. But if you are eating well, meaning you're eating a high fiber, organic, sensible in terms of what modern health discoveries have arrived at diet, you are taking pains to eliminate radio frequency microwaves from your life and lifestyle, and you seek exercise and get lots of fresh air, you're a good candidate for grounding. You're probably going to notice an improvement in your well-being very quickly if you invest in a grounding product. But if you don't meet all three of those criteria, don't expect much when it comes to grounding. And it takes too much energy for me to beg people to stop carrying their cell phone around, unplug your Wi-Fi at night. I just can't give everybody hands-on guidance and direction as to how to improve their lifestyles that to make them a good candidate for grounding.
Taking your advice, I don't unplug my Wi-Fi, but I have a infrared on-off switch that the Wi-Fi is plugged into. So when I go to bed, I hit that switch, turn off my Wi-Fi, and I lay on my grounding strip, and I sleep very well for the little sleep that I do allow myself. I only get a few hours sleep some nights, but I am full of energy all day. I feel terrific, and I'm wondering if it's because of all of these. It's not that many things, but these other products that I'm taking that really have given me energy. I don't worry about how much sleep I get. I get as much sleep as I need, and sometimes that's 3 hours. Sometimes it could be 6 hours, but I just kind of go with the flow. And I believe that, the Wi-Fi, the grounding, and these other things that we're going to talk about in a moment are a big factor of it.
Yeah, and I'm a total subscriber to everything she mentioned as far as, you know, we don't touch the ground enough. We don't get out there enough. We are missing the electrons. I totally agree. So tell me, as far as the products go, what do you have in those that, I guess, to supplement what we're so severely lacking these days, Sophia?
Well, again, I would say to anyone who is seeking an improvement in well-being and who is skeptical, because most people are, they think that you're just trying to sell them something. And that's a little bit insulting to me because I go to lengths to give an explanation as to why I'm recommending this or that. For instance, I had a farmer's market booth for nearly 5 years, and I was interacting with mainstream, coastal, mainstream, highly affluent public. And they would come by my booth And I would try to introduce them to magnesium cream. It was the easiest thing to sell because almost everybody's got some kind of joint pain or stiff neck. The stuff works in literally less than a minute for most people. And it's $10. $10. I mean, how much are you asking people to spend? $10 is not a lot. And for the kind of improvement it gives you, mind blowing. And I would explain the utility and the benefit of magnesium, how it's the dominant ion in the cell. It's yielded to the bloodstream to keep the major organs going. And I'm going to give you something that right now that I worked out on my very own. The body's main concerns in terms of organ functionality are the heart, lungs, and brain. That's what it wants to keep going. The body doesn't care if you have a broken ankle. As long as it can keep your heart going, that's what it wants to do. So I figured out after watching old people, because we have snowbirds here. They come from Minnesota, Wisconsin, the Midwest. Even Canada, they come and they winter here. We call them the snowbirds. I live in Southern California. And I would watch these snowbirds struggle past my booth, leaning over walkers, huffing and puffing. They were fat. Their skin looked like hell, like parchment, white paper. Their joints made ankles swollen, joints that barely functioned, atrophied muscles. And yet their heart, lung, and brains were going. And that to me was a direct demonstration of the body's prioritization. And I would offer them magnesium cream. And they would turn me down because they never heard of it. Their doctor doesn't talk about it. And somebody at a booth is trying to sell them something. Okay, so the body will sacrifice the health of the cells in secondary and tertiary systems, meaning your muscles, your bones, your skin. Body doesn't care. If it has to pull nutrients out of those cells, it'll do it to give it to the heart, lungs, and brain. And that's why so many old people spend so many years in degenerative decline, and they leave the world ailing and failing.
Sophia, so the magnesium cream, I actually have a bunch of tubes. I have one at the gym. I have in my kitchen. I have it in my bathroom. And I use it. And you're right. It works within minutes. I get a knot in my neck or something aches. It's amazing. What about taking magnesium internally? You have some, I have the magnesium flakes, but I don't really use them. I just been using the cream. Is that what you recommend for most people?
Well, that is one of the most directly observable benefits of magnesium. Magnesium, okay, picture your cell. Your cell has the cytoplasm inside. It's got the nucleus. There's a lot of biological, very important work going on inside each cell. And magnesium is the dominant ion in the cell. It's a very important mineral. It neutralizes metabolic acids. It is very important for enzymatic activity, enzymes. And our organs have to have the correct pH to work. So they need the correct extracellular pH, which means how acidic is the blood that's bringing them the nutrients that they need for their upkeep. Okay, so if there's too much acid in the blood, magnesium is yielded, it's pulled, it's yanked from inside the cells to correct the balance because the body wants to get the blood right so that it can keep those major organs going. So magnesium alkalinizes, it neutralizes pH in the bloodstream. That's why it's so very important. It also relaxes muscles. It provokes and promotes smooth muscle motility. So when you have a knot in your neck, and you put the magnesium on, it'll do that to striated muscle as well. It will relax that knot. It opens up tissues so that healing can occur more easily. Blood can arrive because now these channels in the body are open more. Calcium constricts and rigidifies everything. It works kind of in tandem with, but also kind of in opposition to magnesium. The body wants both, calcium and magnesium. Calcium makes things hard and tight, and it makes you hurt. Magnesium makes things open and soft, and it makes you relaxed. So this is how you can actually promote healing. When you have an injury, not only do you have inflammation, soreness, redness, all of that, which is the body's own way of bringing in repair materials. The inflammatory process is a repair process. When you add magnesium, it keeps those blood vessels open. It keeps those lymphatic vessels transporting waste, deporting waste. And a lot of people in America are constipated, constant issues with constipation. Don't take laxatives. Take a magnesium product, which they're formulated for internal consumption. It's usually magnesium citrate. There's a very popular product called Calm, C-A-L-M. You take a teaspoon of Calm powder in water or orange juice once a day, and you don't have a constipation problem anymore. Because magnesium moves smooth muscles, and that's what your GI tract is. It's smooth muscle. So magnesium can help in so many ways, and a tube of magnesium, if you put a little cream or you spray a little magnesium spray on your skin, not only can you direct the magnesium to where you have a pain issue at that very moment, and it'll work very fast, but the magnesium itself is going to enter your bloodstream as it gets absorbed by the skin, and then it's going to travel around and it's going to benefit you.
That was my next question was, can you just if you put it on, does it affect your whole body? And you just answered that. There's so much to say about magnesium that we can go on for a whole show on it, but I want to get to two other things. One other is iodine. Everyone's heard about iodine, but nobody takes it. And I take it daily, and I kind of let my intuition tell me how much to take it. Can you tell us a little bit how the mineral, it is mineral, right? Iodine affects us and why we need it so much and why we don't have it?
Yes, I can. Iodine, actually, to my surprise, it is actually a metal, just like magnesium. A lot of these things that our body needs in various, amounts. It needs certain metals in trace amounts. It needs right now a decent amount of iodine as well as magnesium. There are reasons for that. Magnesium, the reason is the acidosis in the body, which is the platform for disease. Disease develops in acidic environments. Iodine is the most important element for the body because it is the primary atom in your thyroid hormone. It is one of the primary components. Your thyroid is this gland in your neck, and it produces 4 hormones that are referred to as T1, T2, T3, and T4. And the thyroid is one of your master regulators, glandular regulators. Those hormones travel all over your body, and they get things going. Hormones are messengers. You could call them messenger chemicals. But your thyroid needs iodine. T1 has 1 atom of iodine, T2 has 2, T3 has 3, and T4 has 4. T4 is thyroxine. It's a very important hormone for the brain. This is why a lot of people have brain fog today, because they don't have the correct material in their thyroxine that their thyroid is making because they're iodine deficient. So what's happening, here's where it will all fall into place for the modern awake listener. Iodine, if you look at it in the periodic table, lines up with bromine, chlorine, and fluorine. They are in a family called the halogens. They're called a family because they're very similar in their atomic mass, their electromagnetic charge, which is negative, and their basic. They are both diatomic molecules. They like to be with a twin. So iodine is I2, chlorine is Cl2, and bromine is also bonded with another bromine, and fluorine is F2. So they are recognized by the body. The body, I call the body a blind man. The body is not used to chemicals and compounds and molecules that it doesn't encounter in nature. And when something floats in that's man-made, that's a similar shape, a similar electromagnetic charge, has a similar feel to something that the body is used to, it says, oh, that's it. This is what I have. The body looks for iodine. It grabs chlorine, which is everywhere in our lives. It's in our drinking water. We clean our houses with it. It grabs fluorides. which are lining, food containers now, the Teflon pans, it's in your drinking water if you live in certain parts of the country, bromides, bromine, and the body goes, oh, good, this is iodine, because it thinks that this similar molecule is the thing it normally uses, which is iodine. In nature, bromine, chlorine, and fluorine they don't get into organisms that easily in an unsafe form. So, for instance, sodium chloride is salt water, but we need the sodium in our blood, and the chloride is used to make hydrochloric acid. But when you're getting just deluged with bromine, chlorine, and fluorine, the way that we are in modern life, those molecules, they sit on our iodine receptors in our body, throughout our body, and they fool it. And what I learned from Dr. Brownstein, who's an iodine expert, was that the poor thyroid is making fluoridated thyroid hormone, brominated thyroid hormone, and chlorinated thyroid hormone, instead of making thyroid hormones with iodine in it. And that stuff is going to your various organs and trying to messenger. And that's what's toxifying us. So we need to have, I would say, a copious amount of iodine compared to the trace amount that we might have needed in another age, because that iodine presence sitting on your cell receptors doesn't allow bromine, chlorine, and fluorine to come in and take over.
Jay, I've talked to Sophia so many times about this stuff that it's just amazing to me, but it is a little mind blowing. How are you handling getting all of this information for the first time?
I'm believe it or not, I'm rapidly taking notes as she's saying all this, because again, I've always been a believer in the fact that the food we take in, the air we breathe in, for the last, 30, 40, however many years, is not beneficial to our lives. I've been a big subscriber of that. So anytime someone offers up information like this, I'm one of those that absorbs it and studies it and eventually becomes a believer in it. So I've just been totally taking notes this entire time.
It's not about believing, again, I hear the stuff, I take it with a grain of salt, and I've been generally in good health most of my life, all of my life. And when you take something to improve your health, when you're in good health, you really have to look carefully to say, is it improving my health? Do I really feel a difference? But when I've taken a good hard look, I haven't been to the doctor in years. I don't remember the last time I went to the doctor. But when I went, it was a long time ago. It's because I had a sinus infection. And that's only because I wasn't taking the proper things. Now, if I start getting, if I feel, something going on, a cough or whatever, I take natural stuff that cures it, makes it better much faster. But honestly, since I've been taking the iodine, since I've been using magnesium, and since I've been taking Restore, which we're going to talk about next, I haven't felt any sort of sickness except perhaps a little cough in my throat. And that's just because I'm a mouth breather. I talk a lot and all of the crap in the air.
You mentioned the Restore to me. That's the only thing you had mentioned to me before. And I was like, oh yeah, I definitely want to hear more about that. That whatever it was that you told me, it definitely struck a chord with me, because I was like, yeah, I'd love to try that. Tell me about Restore.
Okay, I already talked about magnesium, which is $10 to start. Iodine, you can start it at $12 for a quarter ounce. That's a 2-month supply. Well, that's at one of my websites. Scratch that. Iodine you can try for $20 on the Flat Earth Minerals website. And I created this Flat Earth Minerals concept because the Flat Earth is giving us these important minerals, which are fundamentally metals. But anyway, so $10, $20, and now there's Restore. Restore is a little more expensive, but Restore is a brilliant, brilliant creation of the Restore team, which is pretty much headed by Dr. Zach Bush. And I came across an interview with him done by Dr. Mercola. They didn't even talk about Restore in this interview, but they were talking about how limited our gut biome is and how much that affects our bioelectricity. This is all kind of complicated, but I'll start with the basics. And Jay, you were saying that the food we eat doesn't benefit us. Well, even if you were super organic, non-GMO, you ate an absolutely, spiffy, flawless, healthy diet, you still would be running behind in terms of a couple of things in your body. It may interest you to know, Jay, in particular, because David already knows this. Jay, you mentioned that our food isn't serving its true purpose anymore. And there's actually a tremendous reason behind that, which exceeds the idea of, well, if you're eating processed food, then you're not getting much nutrient benefit out of it. But our food, if you were the most, flawless, organic, non-GMO, exercise-holic, natural food consumer, you still wouldn't be getting a ton of benefit out of your food. And the reason for that is that we've lost not only our gut biome, but our soil biome. And there's a connection between the two. So what do I mean by gut biome? Your gut starts in your head, and it includes your digestive tract. It goes all the way down to your rectum, but it includes the sinus passages, mucosal tissues, and you have to rely on bacteria living in your gut to digest your food. You cannot digest your food on your own. Bacteria are non-human. They are a different life form altogether. And we have somehow, along the line, back in time, we integrated bacteria into our bodies. We incorporated them. Think of us as a corporation. We incorporated another life form, a non-human life form, into our bodies to the tune of trillions and trillions of them. And they are the little critters that process our food. They bring the fats and sugars out of the food, and those fats and sugars are delivered through the gut wall to the waiting blood supply that carries those fats and sugars over to our cells. And still, the human body itself, in terms of its human componentry, cannot do anything with those fats and sugars. We now rely in the cell, we rely on another foreign form of life, the mitochondria, that live within the nuclei of our cells. The mitochondria are derived from ancient bacteria. So now here's another non-human life form living in us that knows how to pull electrons out of the fats and sugars and pack them into this nano battery that is in all of our cells, sometimes, up to 1 million in a cell, called adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. ATP is the fuel of the cell, and your cells need your body weight in ATP every day. That's how much ATP you use to do the basic work of getting through a day. You need your body weight in ATP. And ATP
That's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot.
How does it use your entire body weight of ATP? I can't make heads or tails of that.
So ATP is a nano battery. It's very, very small. Consider it a battery. And when your cells use the electrons from ATP, ATP charges the cell with electrons. ATP is then reduced into its precursors, which are ADP, adenosine diphosphate, and adenosine monophosphates, and a couple of other very basic building blocks. So now it's the job of your mitochondria, those foreign life forms living in your cell, in the nucleus, to say, oh, we got some reduced batteries here. We've got to recharge them with electrons. So my theory is that if you were out there walking on the ground, your body would be pulling in free electrons, and those would contribute to the recharging of your ATP. Those electrons would turn ADP and AMP back into ATP. And one thing grounding does is it reduces your desire for food, because you are getting all this energy from the ground, this electricity. So absent being in contact with the ground, you are going to have to pull all your electrons out of food, the digestion of food, which is done by bacteria in your body. So that's one reason grounding is so important. It assists your cells in getting their electricity. But your cells, regardless, have to use so much ATP every day that your body is recycling, it's repacking, reconstituting your body weight in ATP. Does that now that have I explained it better for you at this point?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes more sense.
No, it makes a lot of sense, actually. Yeah.
So now here is something that I'm going to add from a show I did with Janice Barcelo, which it's too wild and I love it. And I think she's absolutely right. We are highly crystalline. We have crystal materials in our bones. They're in our tissues. The structured water in the cell, the cytoplasm of the cell is 99% of the cell. The nucleus is 1%. And science just looks at the nucleus. That's all it's curious about. So the cytoplasm of the cell is like the white of an egg. If you picture an egg as a huge cell, the yolk is the nucleus and the cytoplasm is the white of the egg. Well, the cytoplasm in each of our cells is not just composed of plain old water. It's composed of structured water. It's a crystalline water. It's electromagnetic in its composition. And that water responds to electricity. And so does so much of our body. The crystalline materials in our body are piezoelectric. Piezoelectric is a term that an electrical engineer taught me many years ago, but nobody talks about it in science. They're using it in nanotech like there's no tomorrow, but biology uses it as well. And all these crystalline materials in our body, they help to create our body's energy. They help to create our body's different transactions. And I just discovered that the heart is not a pump. The heart is an electrical charger. It charges your blood with electricity. It does not pump it and push it all the way to your toes. And the blood spirals out of your ascending and descending aorta. And I have my own theory as to how it continues to be recharged and recharged all the way to your toes. My theory is that there are piezoelectric effects going on inside the blood vessels that keep that blood charging and spinning. The blood literally spins down to your toes, spins up to your brain. And all of this spinning is done through piezoelectricity, crystalline materials in the body. So the crystalline parts of us, Janice proposed to me, are intelligent. That's where we get our metaphysical downloads. That's where we get our telepathy. That's where we get our sixth sense. And I think she's absolutely right. We are so electric. We're super electric and electromagnetic. This is why we must always be in contact with and experience the sun and the earth.
So that's very interesting about the water in our cells. Being holding the information. There's been experiments where they use water to hold information. Dr. Emoto did his experiments and everything, but I forget exactly where I heard it from. But I had been looking into it a while ago. Maybe even you told me that water can hold more information than maybe anything else. Was it you that told me that?
I'm not sure. I doubt that I said that to you, but it's water is an information bank. Water responds to different forms of information, including our emotions.
So let's talk more about what the Restore actually does to your gut. It restores all of these bacteria or life forms to your gut.
All right. So what happened, I'll just go back a little bit. As of World War II, with the boom in industry, first they had a bunch of industries supporting the war. I mean, all kinds of stuff, making uranium refineries and whatnot, a lot of metal coatings for all the ships and the parts of war machinery. And then they had synthetic rubber after the war, and the industrial boom continued. And a lot of these manufacturing sites, companies, they had a ton of waste coagulating. Some of it was in barrels on lots behind the plant. Some of it was in the factory chimneys. It was aggregating as what they call flue dust, baghouse dust, chimney dust. And they would just scrape this stuff out, collect it all, and dump it on empty land. And that was absolutely forbidden after a while. The EPA got a little more active. America developed environmental consciousness, and these companies had to dispose of their hazardous waste. They couldn't just dump it. And so somebody had a very brilliant idea at some point. And I mean, it was one of these dark, brilliant ideas. This person said, hey, all these noxious, toxic elements that make up our hazardous waste, they're all in the earth anyway. They're all earth elements. I mean, manganese, lead, arsenic, titanium, barium, strontium. It's all part of the earth. So why don't we just mix this with fertilizer and give it to farmers, and they'll put it back in the earth? And that's what was done. We developed what was called chemical fertilizers, and we started to use them. And organic only refers to use of chemical pesticides. Organic farmers are allowed to put up to 250 chemicals on their land. I heard this from organic farmers myself. They can put up to 250 chemicals on their crops in their land, and in the form of chemical fertilizer. So the chemical fertilizer, chemical fertilizer injured the plants, injured the crops. It made them weaker over time. And that brought in the pests, the bugs, the mites, the molds. And now you had a twin industry. Now you needed chemical pesticides. So the two ride together. And we, by using chemical fertilizers and chemical pesticides and ripping up the soil with the heavy machinery, tilling fields, just, destroying, hacking up roots of everything, exposing everything to the air. Oxygen is corrosive. That's why it's called oxidation. Rust is a corrosive process because of oxygen. So when you expose the soil, everything in it, you chop up the roots of the prairie grass, for instance, in the Dust Bowl. That's when they first started using modern farming equipment. And they loosened up all the roots of the prairie grass, and the winds came and it blew all the topsoil away. So we have eradicated the topsoil of the planet. We're supposed to have something like 200 feet of topsoil, and we have 2 feet. 2 feet. That's what we've got left on the earth. And that's what we're growing our food in. And because we've dumped so many chemicals in the form of pesticides and fertilizers on the soil, we have wiped out the biome of the soil. We have reduced it to all but those forms of bacteria that can survive these hazards we've exposed them to. And we've depleted the biome. The biome is the spectrum of bacteria living in the soil that are transferred into our bodies by way of our breathing, contact, eating. So in our guts, we don't have enough bacteria types because they're not in the soil anymore. So we are supposed to have, ideally, between 20 and 30,000, even upwards of 30,000 different kinds of bacteria living in our gut that we get from the earth. And those bacteria not only break our food down, but they produce a carbon molecule of their own that has to do with their energy supply. And that carbon molecule talks to the mitochondria in our cells. And I'll go over this again, but let me just say now that we are, each of us, not equipped any longer with the bacterial variation that we require. We require a minimum of 20,000, if not 30,000 kinds of bacteria. Kinds. We have bacteria numbering in the trillions in our body, but we need kinds, different kinds, types. We need 30,000 at least, 20,000 at least. And it takes 44 people together to come up with 10,000 types of bacteria in their gut between them. So we're running, each of us, at under 10% of the gut biome spectrum.
So restores your gut biome. Where does it come from?
Restore is the creation of Dr. Zach Bush, who discovered that these carbon molecules that each of these types of bacteria make, they all make a different type of carbon. I refer to them as motorcycle sidecars. If the bacteria is the motorcycle, each bacterial form has a sidecar of carbon that it makes that gives it's like a sidecar with your own gas tank on it, that gives the bacterium its own energy. So these motorcycle sidecars, which are actually carbon molecules, different kinds of carbon molecules, they're called metabolites of carbon, they electrically signal to the mitochondria in our cells. And let's say we have 30,000 different kinds of cells and tissues, which is very possible. We need the spectrum of bacteria for the spectrum of carbons that each of them comes with that do the health regulation in our bodies. Our health is seriously dependent on the interaction, the electrical interaction, it's called redox signaling, of bacterial foreign forms of life that live in us. So Dr. Bush, when he discovered this, he realized we can't get the biome back because it doesn't exist. Unless you went to the depths of the Amazon where there was no introduction of modern anything, or someplace in Africa, or someplace in the wild, the biome of the earth has been altered. And you're not going to get a species spectrum anymore, basically anywhere. So he went to the Southwest desert in America. And the desert, he reasoned, represents what used to be 200 feet of topsoil, because the desert hasn't been farmed with modern methods at all. It just hasn't. It's too old. So even though the desert is now, the earth is compacted, it's dried, the bacteria can't live in it. The bacteria are gone, but the carbons are there. So he made this product Restore. And it took an awful lot of development to create Restore. I mean, just the way, the research that has gone into it, the way that it's distributed, packaged. I mean, this is a super, super product. This is not something somebody cooked up in their bedroom and put in network marketing, right? Restore has the ability to confer, to integrate back into your gut this spectrum of carbon metabolites that your health system needs. And once you start taking Restore, it's in a liquid form. It looks like weak Lipton tea, and it tastes about the same. It will put those carbon metabolites into your gut that start signaling to all your different mitochondria, and your health starts to get regulated again.
So we need to actually kind of wrap this up soon. My question to you is, what are some benefits that you've had experience with Restore? What has it done for different groups of people?
I started Restore in April. I reasoned that this made complete sense. This was a no-brainer. If I was going to get my health better, I mean, it's already reasonably good, but I wanted to see how it worked, how this Restore worked. So I started taking it, a teaspoon before each meal, and the first thing I noticed was incredible mood elevation, feeling really happy. Then I started noticing that things got better. Digestion was better, sleep was incredibly deep, dreams were amazing. It was like my creativity was back in my subconscious. The most entertaining, deep, fascinating dreams. But apart from that, and possibly more important than that, a lot of little symptoms have started to disappear. Things that I didn't even identify until they were gone for several weeks. So I've had a string of steady improvements, but much better energy and much better happiness and much better attitude. So on some level, I believe Restore is creating in my body a much better regulation of cellular and subcellular work, let's call it. And that translates all the way up. It goes all the way up the totem pole. It affects your mood, your psychological state, your emotional state, your creative state, your spirituality, your philosophical positions. And it's worth the money. The money seems expensive. It's $50 for a month or $70 for a 2-month supply. But I say you've got to try it. So that's why I put it on the Flat Earth Minerals site. FlatEarthMinerals.com will bring you iodine, magnesium, and Restore. And there's a 3-pack you can get for just $5 shipping. So you can try it all. And people I know have been raving about it. And slowly it's making a lot of people feel a lot better.
And I am one of them. So this is the first show that we've done where we're actually giving information on something that you can buy. And for the fear of this sounding like a commercial, I wanted this to come out because I personally use it and I want other people to use it. And I love the fact that you named the website Flat Earth Minerals.
That's my favorite part as well.
Yeah, I mean, and it is a cool website. I mean, our front page picture was done by David Dees.
Yep.
So I say Restore iodine and magnesium are too good not to share. That's why I want to share this stuff. It's not just to sell something. And this is how I stay alive, honestly. If I didn't make money selling the things I know about and sharing this information, going to such lengths to break this information down so that it's understandable by the average person, then I wouldn't be able to do this. If I couldn't survive, I wouldn't be able to do what people are thanking me for doing. So I'm thanking you for keeping me going by buying and trying some of this stuff.
So I just want to point out as we wrap this up that these products, you can get them anywhere you want, or you can get them from the person that taught you about them for about the same price. It may be even better. But Sofia has literally changed my life with all of the knowledge that she has given me, and I'm a very happy person. I don't really have nothing to compare it to. Like maybe without the stuff, I'd be a miserable, crotchety person. But I'm extremely happy, healthy, and I would just want all the people in my life to use these things and enjoy health beyond what they've imagined.
Yeah, and I think I want to try some of that Restore, but tell everyone where they can get the Restore.
FlatEarthMinerals.com has the 3 basics: magnesium, iodine, and Restore, and you can get them all at once for $5 shipping and be done with it and then try it. You can go and look on the internet for this stuff. You won't find the same kind of iodine at that price. Nascent iodine is a lot more expensive than the $20 bottle I sell. Magnesium cream you can find, but you're not necessarily going to find the kind that we sell, and you're going to pay shipping 3 times. So I would say try it from FlatEarthMinerals.com. It's a very simple way to buy all at once from one place, and then I'll share more things that I discover. That's what we want, right?
Absolutely. I say we need to support each other. People that teach you about things, support them. You know, just like you support your local bookstore rather than going to Amazon. So, you know, it's easy to click Amazon, one-click buying, but it's not much more difficult to buy from Sofia.
We have one-click buying.
There you go. All right, the delay is back to haunt us here, so I'm going to say thank you for coming on, Sofia. Thank you for all that you do, and we're looking forward to talking to you again in the near future.
I thank everyone in advance. I really urge you to go to FlatEarthMinerals.com. You can check out my blog as well at Sofia with an F, SofiaSmallstorm.com, and my podcast page is accessible from the blog. And I would like to just, again, thank David and Jay for this opportunity. We're not really pushing products. We're just trying to explain why everybody is dropping behind in the race to feeling even tolerable. We have to feel good. If you don't feel good and you're not organized on the cellular level, it's going to send the rest of your life into a tailspin. So you want to get better so that you can feel and act. And the law of attraction says you're going to draw things into your life that work for you, but you can't do that if you're not in a good space, a good emotional, spiritual, mental, biological space. So this is the easiest way to get there that I know of.
Copy that. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us, Sofia, and we'd love to have you back on the show again in the future. And Dave, you got anything else to add before we ride off in the sunset?
No, that is it. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you in the next show.
Wow. Well, my dad felt a little bit sad for me when I mentioned that word gravity. He said, have a little independent thought, question what you've just been taught. I mean, how the hell could a ball that spins make a force so strong that sucks everything in? Yet birds and insects fly unaffected. Gravity must be so selective.
The Flat Earth Podcast.